Greetings and bienvenue, midnight crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
What is the scariest paranormal thing you've experienced?
Be 16 years old, staying at my nan's house in Spain. The guest bedroom is right next to the bathroom that my granddad had a heart attack and died in. Sitting up and on my phone until around 3 a.m. because the heat was keeping me up. Suddenly the room gets really cold and the air is heavy, as well as that dogs around the neighborhood start barking wildly for no reason, which is weirder at 3 a.m. Can hear pacing outside the room and I turn on the light and the pacing stops down the hallway almost immediately. Sounds as if someone was stamping up to my door in anger. Whatever it is starts scratching on the door and messing about with the door handle. I'm frozen in fear and ask who's there. The rattling and scratches abruptly stop and the thing walks away. I am properly shaken up but turn off the light and lay down but can't sleep for shit. I feel like I'm being watched and I sit up again, seeing a figure in the corner of the room, about the height and general build of my granddad. Turn the light back on and not sleep for the night. In the morning I ask my nan what that was about and she gave an almost sad smile and says that he misses you.
I have two stories that involve the same general location. Going to be a long wall of text, hope you enjoy. Story 1. Friends and I several years ago played a lot of paintball during our high school years. We lived in southwest Michigan, a smaller redneck town. Lots of forest and farmland, but we got lucky and got permission to use this large plot of land, about 10 acres, for paintball. This land had deep forests, sand dunes, and a few abandoned structures near a train track that hardly ever was used. So we began playing about every week for several years, would get to that field about noon and fuck around all day. We started to notice that once the set began to set, the forest became really tense. Like we couldn't explain it, but you felt fine all day, but once night started to fall you felt eyes watching you. You felt like something was just near and it was very upset you were in the woods. This feeling was so intense we would often cut our games short once nightfall came. One weekend 3 of us decided to take a night trip. We wanted to play night games, but we've been putting it off because no one honestly felt comfortable staying out all night at this location. So we wanted to scout it out and see what nighttime was really like out here. We get to our usually place, the buildings near the tracks, and get our gear on. This time we left the paintball guns at home though and had a few machetes, and my oldest friend took his dad's handgun with as well. We also had a flashlight and one pair of night vision goggles. So we get moving through our normal playing areas into the thick woods that had no trails and pretty much no sign of human interference. The 3 of us are on edge because the woods are so damn still and quiet. No bugs, no birds, nothing, just pure silence. The tension I mentioned earlier was so thick in the air and each of us were pretty much in kill mode. We are moving really slow and hunched down, making our way over a ridge. Our friend with the night vision goggles freezes and whispers to himself, "Holy fuck, what the fuck shit." We freeze as well and pull out our weapons. He hands the goggles over to the guy with the gun, who then takes aim and tells us to get the fuck out of here. We fucking bolt and he fired his gun twice and then follows us. We run back about maybe 2 football fields of length before we stop. Both of them are scanning the area and look like they've seen a fucking ghost. I keep asking what they saw, but all they could do was keep moving back to the buildings where we left the Jeep. After we get back and get ourselves back in the Jeep, they still aren't talking, just keep checking the mirrors. I'm pretty spooked and we get back to the closest guy's house. After heading upstairs, they finally told me what they saw. The first guy was scanning the ground when he saw something hunched over, and he said he first thought it was just a coyote, but it turned and it had a longish face that wasn't quite dog but almost human as well. This thing smiled at him, and that's when he tore the goggles off and handed them over to the guy with the gun. So he spots this creature that was now moving towards us at a pretty damn fast pace, hence why he fired his gun. After shooting, the creature ducked out of his vision, and that's when he ran with us. The first friend was so spooked that he never went back to play paintball with us there again. We never did hold a night game, and after that experience we always packed up and left right before the sun would set. Story 2. So it's about a year after we see this creature in the woods. I had been dabbling in some occult magic, made contact with Lilith after several attempts, and overall felt really open to energy and unseen things. I was heading home, which at this time in my life was about an hour's drive north of the paintball field. I get on the road that takes up to the field, and as I pass the woods I just feel that heavy tension, and I think back to that night we explored and decided to stop the Jeep. I get on out and call out to this pressure I feel and basically let it know that I'm not scared of you anymore and you can't hurt me. After feeling proud of myself, I get back into my Jeep and head down the road. I don't even drive 30 seconds and I suddenly get hit with this horrible negative energy. I feel as if two knives are shoved into my gut on either side of me. The radio that was playing just fine now was static and basically faded out, and the windows literally froze over and I couldn't defrost them. I felt held and stuck in place by this painful feeling, and even though I couldn't see anything, I just had such a strong feeling that something was sitting in my passenger seat next to me. I get about halfway home and it just stops. My radio comes back on. The frost leaves. The pain is gone. It was so damn strange and surreal I didn't know what to think. I get home and I'm talking to grandmother. She's in the kitchen and I'm sitting at the table. Behind her is the door to the garage. It's a glass door you can see through pretty easily. So I'm talking to her and she moves, and in that glass door I see a tall figure with a red face smiling ear to ear looking down at me. I'm literally getting chills just typing this, to be honest. So this figure is there for just a few moments and then it's gone. I'm so damn spooked I head on to my room and spend most of the night doing banishing spells and trying to cleanse myself from whatever it was I provoked and brought back with me.
This is one of the spooks I remember vividly as a child. Happened when I was 6 years old. I am now 22. My family and I would go to Disney a lot when I was a kid, season passes because we lived in South Florida. Anyways, for fucking stupid reasons we moved to Central Florida, and no more Disney. So I had 2 bookcases next to my bed, filled with items I've gotten at Disney over years. Wake up at 3 a.m. to noise. Very high-pitched distorted noise. Realize it's coming from my stuffed animal Pooh Bear that has a voice and its head can also move. It's on the top shelf of my bookcase and I cannot reach it. Still in bed, creeped out. Head moves towards me and says, "Let's be friends," almost like its battery is dying. I scream at the top of my lungs. Parents come running in and my mom is creeped out by it. Dad laughs it off and takes the battery out in front of me to comfort me. Pooh Bear is still talking and head moving. Dad is creeped out and takes it outside to the far end of the driveway in the trash. My dad told me when I was older that it was still talking when he put it in the trash.
Be 14 years old. Occasionally, 2 to 6 months, have night terrors and nightmares during times of stress. Have a recurring nightmare where I'm standing upon a dark, clouded beach watching a tall figure, cloaked in red and black. Every time my brain conjures up this dream, it always seems to inch a little bit closer, never revealing its face. I've had this recurring nightmare since I was a small child, and it still somewhat haunts me to this day. Anyways, on this particular night I had gotten into a small argument with my mother before heading off to bed and falling asleep rather quickly. I'm instantly launched into a dreamlike state as I begin to snooze. This has never happened before and things seemed a bit off. In my dream, I was transported to my familiar beach, but the entity was nowhere to be found. Instantly wake up in pure terror to a cold, dark and seemingly unfamiliar room. My eyes dart around until I lock sight with what looks like the outline of the cloaked figure huddled in the corner of my room. I instantly jolted up, screaming in horror as I reached for the nearest object, which happened to be a foldable metal chair, and smashed it against the wall where I perceived the entity to be. My parents just brushed it off as another night terror, but this one was almost too realistic for that to be the case.
About a month ago, I attended my cousin's first communion at her church. It was a very large building with about 450 people at the service. I was religious as a kid, but stopped going to church around 4th grade, and just stopped caring about religion after that. Anyways, throughout the whole service I felt that everyone was staring at me. I don't mean quickly glancing at me then back to the pastor, I mean fixed gaze right on me. I choked it up and just said they were staring at the pastor and I was just being paranoid. The final prayer was said and the service ended. I went to go talk to my other cousin who was an altar boy during the ceremony. That's when he said something really odd. He said that I was distracting him when he was up on the altar. I questioned him as to what I was doing and he said that I didn't do anything, but when he looked over at me he couldn't see my face. He said my face was completely dark, almost like there was no light shining on me at all. I laughed it off and figured it was just the lighting, but it was bright out and the church had tons of indoor lighting plus the skylight lighting. The whole thing seems really coincidental and stupid to me, but I was just wondering if there was any significance to the fact that my cousin couldn't see my face. Maybe all those people staring at me couldn't either. I don't know.
This isn't the scariest paranormal thing, but I think X will like it more because it involved some scientific verification. I used to work as a weather observer in Perth. We would work overnight and we were on our own overnight. I had a strange couple of weeks with lots of clear skies, which was nice because it meant easy work. The first weird thing that occurred when I was out doing a routine METAR observation. I saw a shooting star with a long streak. What was weird though, was that it changed direction by about 90 degrees halfway through. I'd never seen that. I started having really bad nightmares around that time. My bedroom then had mirrors covering a full wall, and I woke up once and swore I saw a face grinning at me. That was the second weird thing around that time. But it was probably just a night shift-induced hallucination. The third odd thing is where it got weird, and this properly scared me. So we still used radar to track balloons back then. You'd have to set it up before you launch though, which involved you taking direct control of the radar and pointing it at things to ensure it's moving and working so you'll be able to lock onto the weather balloon. Basically you'd use this optical tracker, pictured, to turn the radar, and it would give a beeping return if it's hitting something. So in a clear sky you get no return, but rain, plains, hills, etc. would give a return. I had the midnight balloon set up and ready to launch and was testing the radar while waiting for the balloon to fill with hydrogen. I was looking up at the clear skies and saw what looked like a clear patch in the stars. It was odd because it was just kind of black, like a patch of no stars. So I decided to turn the radar on it. I got a solid as fuck steady signal from that area of the sky. It scared the hell out of me. I quickly turned the radar off it. Not really sure why. I was due to launch the balloon and I used to love making sure these things went up on the dot. In retrospect, I should have locked the radar onto whatever gave the return, but fuck it, I had a responsibility to launch the balloon. I ran back inside after the launch and was thoroughly spooked for the night. Shortly after the nightmares kind of stopped and life continued as normal, but that all happened in the space of like 2 weeks.
B14. On vacation in the Dominican Republic, near the border to Haiti. My cousin and his friends show me around his hometown, where my mom and uncles grew up. Huge grass fields in the back of our house. Can see a rather big-looking tree on the horizon. Ask them about it. Everyone goes awkward and murmurs to themselves, "We don't go there." They tell me a witch lives in the tree and she enslaves anyone who wanders near. I start laughing and making fun of them for being country bumpkins for believing this shit. Takes me about 2 days to convince them that there's no such thing as witches. We walk towards the tree. The grass is tall enough to cover our vision. About 200 yards away from the tree, this thing is absolutely massive. Makes the animal kingdom tree look small in comparison. There's a makeshift barbed wire fence around the tree. We go through the fence and continue walking towards the base of the tree. The tree seems to be hollow, but it's huge and we can't see inside. There's little huts around the base of the tree, small enough for midgets or Ewoks. Hear a low grumble come from inside the tree. Look towards the tree, see a face looking back, eyes are white, mouth is open in a silent scream. Hear a pack of dogs coming from behind the tree. I'm still staring at the face. Hear my cousin's friend scream. I look towards him. There's a fucking 3-headed pit bull running after him. We dash towards the barbed wire. I lift it up with my shoulder and stop at the bottom of the fence to make a gap large enough for everyone to just run. Manage to close it just as the pit bull slams into it. Missed me by a couple of inches. We all dash out of there. We ran for about 10 minutes straight listening to the dog bark just at our heels. Make it back to our house, tell everyone the story. Parents laugh at us for being kids and get into trouble. Later that night, my uncle came up to me and my cousin. Never go back there, we have an understanding. We don't bother them and they don't bother us. Your grandfather did it as his father before that. Do not anger them. This is the maddest I have seen my uncle in forever. Over the next 8 years, I would ask him about the tree and the face. He would never answer and my cousin knew better than to speak about it. 10 years have passed. My uncle died and the very next day, the tree disappeared. In 2 weeks, all the grassland is gone and replaced by dry earth. Heard that all my cousin's friends died out of illness or bad luck. Comment this to my cousins. They all laugh nervously and try to dismiss it. Last conversation I had with my cousin, he told me, stop asking about it, Anon. She doesn't like it. You don't know how lucky you are, she doesn't want anything from you. 2 months after this, my cousin disappeared for 2 years. When he came back, he had no memory as to where he had been or what he was doing. I don't even want to know anymore.
I've only ever had one, and I'm okay with that. I don't really like telling it because it happened at Gettysburg and that's such a stereotypical, haunted place that people don't usually believe it. I was like 15 at the time and I wasn't in Boy Scouts. We were camping in one of the sites that's right next to the battlefield. Maybe 100 yards through the woods. Anyway, it was 3 a.m. and the kid I wasn't tending with wanted to go on a ghost hunt. I was very against it, but he eventually convinced me by saying it would be the only chance I'll ever get to wander around there in the middle of the night. So me and the 2 kids in my tent sneak away from camp and start heading for the road. I'm spooked 15 feet into the woods, but we're still going. Will, the one who convinced me to go, was sure that we would see something. Rory, the other one, really wanted to go back. After a couple-minute walk through the woods, we're on the road that goes through the battlefield. I'm sketched out because there are lights on the field and I think they're cops or security or something. So we kind of sneak along the road for a while with our lights off. After we go maybe a quarter mile, Rory and I are ready to give up. Before we go, Will tell me he sees something up ahead. It was pitch black out, but there was something. I thought it was a sign reflecting the moonlight, but Will kept saying he saw it flicker and move. So I walked closer to it, while Will and Rory walked a little behind. The weird thing was the light didn't really get clearer as we moved down towards it. It was almost impossible to see until we were right up on it. And all in 1 second I could see it. I remember saying, "Oh shit, it's a girl." It looked like a 12-year-old girl kneeling towards the field, kind of radiating a soft white-blue light. The second I said that, Will and Rory were gone. I stayed and stared for a second, and I swear to God that thing looked at me. It turned its head and just looked. I have never ran faster.
This is my grandmother's experience when she was 18. I will write it exactly as she said it to me. 2007. I was searching on the internet about UFO and shit. Mom walks in. What I'm looking at? Some UFO videos. Oh, your grandmother with her sister saw one when she was working on the fields close to Mount Olympus, Greece. I visit my grandmother at the village the next weekend, and asked her to tell me what she saw when she was a little girl 76 years ago.
I was working on the fields with my brothers and sisters. My sister and I were always staying late till 11 o'clock at night so we could pack the stuff on the donkey. So we took the road of return. It used to take like 25 minutes walking aside with the donkey. As we were walking, the donkey got scared for some reason and started running towards the road leading to our home. We didn't give attention because the donkey knew the road to return home. So we were walking with my sister and suddenly we saw some huge intense lights on the top of the mountain. We thought there was fire or something, but it was a white colorful light like a rainbow but round. That light suddenly started moving down the mountain pretty fast and stopped above the fields. The range between us and the light was at least 500 meters. I and my sister got really scared and sat down behind some bushes while we were watching it. My sister was 2 years younger and she started crying as we were watching. It came closer, about 100 meters. It started to take shape. Instead of a ball of light, it was a big round disc of very shiny metallic with some sort of blooming colorful blue light around it. It was very similar to the aliens they show on TV. The disc came closer, around 50 meters above the fields. It hovered and bloomed with intense lights. It made a horrible sound and flew to the stars so fast we only saw the light leaving behind the air pressure that dropped us down and covered our eyes with dust even if it was from far away.
Years and years ago, I went out to stay with my girlfriend at her mom's house on isolated horse farm deep in the woods. Her mother had about 12 dogs that ran in a big pack and had just recently adopted 2 dogs that have been rescued from a fighting ring. Her mom was out of town that night and requested we shut the new dogs in the basement overnight. They did have food, water, and beds down there, so it wasn't like they had nowhere to sleep. She had these new dogs for a few weeks and said they occasionally slept in the basement and that was no big deal. It was a big deal that night, though. It took both of us using all of our strength to drag them through to the basement door. They whimpered and whined and fought the entire way to the door. No sooner had we shut the door than we heard both of them throwing their weight against the door while barking and whining and scratching. Within about 2 minutes later came crashing right through the door, being a former fighting dogs. I couldn't figure out what had spooked them so badly, so I went into the basement to check it out. The stone basement wasn't that large and was reasonably well lit, and I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. So my girlfriend and I used portable plastic gates in place of the now shattered basement door. They knocked those down too. Finally we managed to get 2 gates installed tight enough, but they couldn't come bursting into the living room. These dogs really were not housebroken or well-mannered, so if they had been allowed to roam unattended overnight, they would have gone to the bathroom all over and probably torn up furniture. I didn't want that happening, and both of us were pretty tired and pissed at that point, so we ended up going to bed. As far as I know, the dogs stayed right at the top of the stairwell landing all night and continued to whine and whimper. Looking back now, I probably should have been more concerned.
I was driving through Clifton Heights, not too far from Short Vine or the campus of the University of Cincinnati. It was cold out, but the roads were dry. All Cincinnati and its surrounding area is pretty hilly, and this neighborhood is no different. It was broad daylight in the middle of the afternoon, not a cloud in the sky. I pulled up to a stop sign. The road I was going to cross Saturday was slightly higher elevation than the road I was on, somewhat similar to crossing a railroad grade, so I was looking somewhat up towards the cross street. I noticed it coming from my left cross traffic. I don't remember if he had a stop sign or not, but either way he didn't stop. It was a banana yellow 1978 Cadillac Eldorado with no hubcaps and rust spots as big as dinner plates. I was particularly drawn to its lack of hubcaps, which exposed the Eldorado's somewhat usually designed convex steel slotted rims. Rims which were not turning at all, as in they were completely stationary, and I could make out the dark brownish red rust stains on them as well as I could on any other part of the car. There was no sound with squealing rubber on the pavement, or did the car appear to be slowing down or skidding. It continued on a completely normal trajectory, directly in front of me. Hardly believing in what was seen, I focused my attention from the wheels to the windows. There was only one occupant visible, and I could see him clearly. An older black man appeared to be in his late 60s to mid-70s with a mustache and wearing a flat driving-style cap. He had turned his head and was looking straight back at me with his mouth open. I guess if I had to describe his expression, it would be one of shock or disbelief. The buildings in that neighborhood sit pretty close to the street, so within a matter of seconds it left my field of view, having crossed completely in front of me. Pick very related that exactly, except with no hubcaps and a severe spotty rust problem. I gunned to the engine, wanting to get a second look at it, and swung my car to enjoy the right turn to the intersection, which should have brought me online directly behind it. It was nowhere to be found. There were only a few driveways, none of which had easily accessible garages. There were also no alleys or cross streets for about another block or way more distance than it could have covered in the amount of time it took for me to turn the corner. To this day, I have no idea what that was.
Be me. Be around about 17. I live in West Virginia. Walking my dog, Bosco, Beagle, German Shepherd mix, in the evening. Nobody around, which is strange because there are usually a few people around even at this time of night. Bosco stops abruptly, looking kind of panicked, sniffing the air. What's wrong, boy? Look where he's looking. About 6 meters away from us, under a glitchy street lamp, is what appears to be a black dog with absurdly pointed ears, facing the opposite direction of us. Poor guy's probably lost, I thought to myself. Bosco is still completely motionless, shivering slightly, tail raised way up. Whistle at the black dog to see if I could get the poor fella over here. Its neck did a full 180 degrees turn to look at us like a fucking owl. It had a human face. A human face. Bosco takes a step forward, haunches his shoulders, lowers his head and growls like a feral beast, the fur on the back of his neck bristling. I'm completely frozen in fear. The thing stands up and turns its body towards us without moving its head. It had massive fucking lumps are moving under its skin whilst it looks me directly in the eyes. My fucking face when a 7-foot thing with basically no muscle mass splits through the dog's back like a cicada. I look away for a split second and try to scream for help. Apparently so fucking scared I couldn't even manage that. In the split second I looked away, the anorexic-looking humanoid that burst through the dog's back was now literally 3 inches away from my face. I don't know how it got there so quickly, but it had even escaped Bosco, who was staring at it the entire time. I literally pissed myself in fear. This thing's eyes were pushed way back in its skull and its jaw looked like it could expand to at least 3 times the size it already was. It stared me down for a few seconds before it let out an ear-splitting human pig scream. Bosco had bitten down on its leg and apparently crushed its shin with his teeth. It fell onto its back and squirmed around like a maggot trying to get Bosco off of its leg. It just fucking rips of its own leg and gallops away on all fours, or threes in this case, into the surrounding woodland. Apparently 3 different people called the police because they thought violent crimes were going on. And that, ladies and gents, is the story of how I came face to face with a demon and how my dog saved me. Okay, so like 6 years ago, 15 at the time, me and my friends were sitting and drinking beers in a park. Then guy comes to us with a guitar, we talk, says he is a gardener, plays a little bit on a guitar. Everything is cool, nothing weird. Fast forward to 2018. My father owned taxi company at the time, so I was driving one. It's small city, so only one is needed. I got the call and I'm driving with a guy and his girl. She gets out on a bus stop and I'm taking him to his grandma's house. He is talking about music, Asians training strength and fingers to play better on instruments, nothing weird but nothing basic. I'm pulling over at the destination, help him to take his things out, and I recognize the guy from 6 years ago. We start talking about shit, and he says that he has eaten human flesh in a hospital near my city. There is also a psychiatric hospital. Tells me that in there he wasn't there for 3 weeks at all, only crossing fingers for 15 minutes a day to gain energy. He had very, very small pupils, like after heroin. I wasn't scared of him, but a little concerned. TL. Dr. Met psycho after 6 years. He is fucking weird.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.